The snow began falling at 3 in the afternoon, soft and gentle at first, like powdered sugar dusting the mountains of Colorado. Jake Martinez wiped down the last table in his small diner, watching the flakes grow thicker through the wide windows that faced the highway. His 7-year-old daughter Emma sat in a corner booth, coloring carefully inside the lines of her princess book, her tongue peeking out in concentration. Jake had opened Mountain View Diner 2 years ago, after his discharge from the Army. The VA loan had made it possible, and the location seemed perfect, right off Interstate 70, where travelers heading through the Rockies would need a warm meal and hot coffee. The diner wasn't fancy, just red vinyl booths, chrome fixtures, and the kind of honest food that filled your belly without emptying your wallet. But business had been slow lately, too slow. The bills were piling up, and Jake found himself lying awake at night, wondering if he'd made the right choice, leaving the security of military life for the uncertainty of small business ownership. At least Emma seemed happy here, chatting with the regular customers and doing her homework at table 6 every day after school. The weather forecast had called for light snow, but by 4 o'clock, Jake could barely see the parking lot through the swirling white. The wind howled around the building's corners, rattling the windows and making the old heating system work overtime. Emma looked up from her coloring book with wide eyes. "Daddy, is it going to be okay?" she asked, her small voice barely audible over the storm. "Of course, sweetheart," Jake said, moving to sit beside her. "We're safe and warm in here. This old building has weathered plenty of storms." As if summoned by his words, the rumble of motorcycle engines cut through the wind's howl. Jake squinted through the snow and made out the dim shapes of headlights approaching. One by one, motorcycles pulled into his parking lot, their riders bundled in leather and heavy coats, looking like dark shadows against the white backdrop. Jake's military training kicked in automatically. He assessed the situation quickly. 15 motorcycles, maybe more, all flying the distinctive patches of the Hells Angels. His hand instinctively moved to Emma's shoulder, a protective gesture born of months of combat patrols in Afghanistan. But these weren't enemy combatants. These were travelers caught in an unexpected blizzard, just like anyone else might be. The diner's bell chimed as the first rider pushed through the door, snow swirling around his boots. He was a big man, probably in his 50s, with a graying beard and weathered hands. Behind him came another, then another, until 15 leather-clad figures filled Jake's small diner. "Storm caught us by surprise," the first man said, pulling off his gloves and looking directly at Jake. "Road's getting dangerous out there. Mind if we wait it out?" Jake felt Emma press closer against his side. The diner suddenly felt very small, very quiet except for the dripping of melted snow and the soft hum of the coffee maker. These men could have demanded anything. They could have taken what they wanted, but they didn't. They stood there politely, waiting for his answer, snow melting in puddles around their boots. "Of course," Jake said, his voice steady. "Take whatever seats you can find. I'll get some coffee going." What followed was not what Jake expected. The bikers settled into booths with quiet efficiency, speaking in low voices among themselves. They ordered coffee, pie, burgers, simple food, paid for with crumpled bills pulled from leather wallets. They were polite to Jake, and when Emma shyly approached one of the tables to ask about the patches on a jacket, they answered her questions with surprising gentleness. "This one here," said a man named Bear, pointing to a colorful patch on his vest. "That's from a ride we did for kids in the hospital. We do a toy run every Christmas." Emma's eyes went wide. "You give toys to sick kids?" "Every year, little darling. Been doing it for 20 years now." The storm raged on outside, but inside the diner, something unexpected was happening. The bikers settled in for the long haul, some playing cards, others reading paperback novels they'd pulled from their saddlebags. One man, who introduced himself as Doc, helped Emma with her math homework, his tattooed fingers surprisingly gentle as he showed her how to carry numbers in addition problems. "You remind me of my granddaughter," he told her with a smile that transformed his gruff face. Jake found himself moving easily among the tables, refilling coffee cups and sharing stories. These men had served too: Vietnam, Desert Storm, Iraq, Afghanistan. They understood the weight of coming home, the challenge of building something new from the pieces of who you used to be. "Nice place you got here," said the man called Bear, who seemed to be their informal leader. "Food's good, coffee's strong. That's all a place needs to be." "Thanks," Jake said, refilling his cup, "though I have to admit, business hasn't been what I hoped. Some days I wonder if I made the right choice." Bear nodded slowly. "Man's got to try, though. Can't spend your whole life wondering what if. You did your service. Now you're serving in a different way. Nothing wrong with that." The conversation flowed naturally, veteran to veteran, each man understanding things that didn't need to be spoken aloud. They talked about the mountains, about long rides on empty highways, about the simple pleasure of a good meal after hours on the road. Emma fell asleep curled up in a booth, covered by Doc's leather jacket, safe and warm while the storm continued its assault outside. By midnight, the snow had stopped, but the roads were still treacherous. The bikers bedded down wherever they could find space, some in booths, others on the floor, making the best of an unexpected situation. Jake brought out every spare blanket he had, and somehow they all made it work. Morning came clear and cold, the sun reflecting off pristine drifts that had transformed the familiar landscape into something magical. Jake woke to the smell of coffee and bacon. Bear was already up, working the grill with practiced efficiency. "Figured we could make breakfast," he said with a grin. "Least we can do." One by one, the other bikers stirred to life, helping clean up, organizing themselves with military precision. They were preparing to leave, and Jake felt an unexpected sadness. These men had been strangers 12 hours ago, but something had changed in the sharing of shelter and stories. Emma woke as they were getting ready to go, rubbing her eyes and looking around the diner with confusion until she remembered the night before. "Do you have to leave?" she asked Bear, who was zipping up his jacket. "We do, little darling, but maybe we'll stop by again sometime." They filed out into the cold morning air, engines roaring to life one by one. Jake and Emma stood in the doorway, waving goodbye as the convoy pulled out of the parking lot and onto the cleared highway. Jake was about to close the door when he heard it, the distant rumble of more engines. He shaded his eyes against the morning sun and saw them coming, dozens of motorcycles, stretching back along the highway like a mechanical parade. They filled his parking lot and lined up along the road, engines idling, chrome gleaming in the sunlight. 102 bikes in total. Jake would learn later. Members of the Hells Angels from chapters across 3 states, all coming to see the diner that had sheltered their brothers in the storm. They didn't all come in, there wasn't room, but they bought coffee to go, t-shirts, anything Jake had to sell. Word had spread through their network overnight. The story of the veteran who opened his doors without question, who treated them with respect and kindness when he could have turned them away. "This is what we do," Bear explained, counting out bills for a stack of t-shirts. "Someone shows us kindness, we remember. We take care of our own, and we take care of those who take care of us." The morning became a blur of activity. Bikers came and went in waves, each group buying something, leaving tips that were far too generous, spreading the word about the good food and honest prices at Mountain View Diner. Emma moved among them like a small ambassador, collecting stories and promises of return visits. By noon, they were gone, but the cash register was fuller than it had been in months. Jake stood in his empty diner, looking at the wad of bills and the business cards pressed into his hand, phone numbers of riders who promised to spread the word to other travelers. They like